I only use one camera and one lens to shoot video and photography at the same time. But this setup would be completely useless without the accessories, settings, and workflow that I use to get the most out of this setup. So in this video, I'm going to show you the gear and tricks that I use so you can do the same thing. And this video is sponsored by the lovely people at Storyblocks. More on them a little bit later. Choosing a hybrid camera for shooting both video and photography at the same time comes with a few trade-offs. I used to own the Sony A7C II, which was a fantastic video camera, but only had a 12 megapixel sensor and no easy way to quickly switch between photo and video mode. So ultimately, after a few years with that camera, I swapped to the Sony A7C II, which has trade-offs of its own, but it doesn't have the overall bulk of the A7S III, and so far I have no regrets.
That's my credo, no regrets.
What are the trade-offs of the A7C II? Well, it's quite simple. For the most part, the thing you're missing is being able to shoot in 4K 50p, because I'm a power boy, in full frame. Instead, we only have 4K 50 with a 1.5 times APS-C crop, which can get in the way a little bit, but actually can have some advantages as well. That's why I made the somewhat insane decision to swap both of my f2.8 Tamron zooms for just one f4 Sony 20-70mm G lens, the lens I'm currently shooting on right now. I was worried that going to an f4 lens would be a big trade-off for low light, but so far the range of focal length has more than made up for that drawback. And now when I'm shooting in 1.5 times crop in 4K 50, my widest 20mm becomes a 30mm, which is much more usable for kind of walking, POV or tracking shots compared to the 42mm when I was cropped in on the Tamron. And often I will actually use this 1.5 times crop to my advantage when I'm shooting all the way up at 70mm. Whether I'm in the 4K 50 where it forces me into a 1.5 times crop, or I'm in 4K 25, I go into the APS-C mode, which bumps me up to around 105mm, and then I use clear image zoom to give myself an extra 1.5 times to go even further. You don't really get much loss in quality, and you're able to get shots all the way as wide as 20mm and then zoomed in to something like 150mm on the long end. So I use two filters pretty much religiously. I have the Moment 5% Cinebloom attached to my lens permanently, and then on the front of that I attach the Moment Variable ND 2 to 5 stop strength. Of course, there are many times that I need to be able to film myself with this camera, and at those points I need to use a tripod for filming talking head stuff like this or B-roll for a YouTube video. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you want to see more videos like this one, remember to hit the subscribe button down below. And for the tripod, I'm using this Shure carbon fiber travel tripod. I can't remember the model name, I'll drop a link in the description below, but it's carbon fiber, packs up very small, very lightweight, and very easy to use. And it pairs brilliantly with my small rig base plate that I have attached to the A7C II. That doubles up as a great grip for the camera and also a tripod plate for this particular tripod mount. This small rig base plate also kind of improves the overall grip of the A7C II. The A7C II is a very small camera, but when you put a zoom lens on, it can start to feel like the body is a little bit too small, so the grip really helps with that, especially when you're trying to shoot some handheld video. I don't really use gimbals, and I think you can get pretty solid handheld video from most cameras these days that have in-body image stabilization. But there is one trick that I use to improve the in-body image stabilization of the A7C II. I'll show you in this clip here. Oh no, I forgot to get this shot when I was filming this video, but I've had this problem many times. And that's where Storyblocks comes in. Instead of searching through multiple platforms for the right clips, music, or graphics, Storyblocks gives you access to an entire library in one place. Their collection includes 4K and HD video, templates, music, sound effects, images, and more. All of these are available for unlimited downloads with a single subscription, so you know exactly what you're paying for. Storyblocks sources its content from real artists around the world, so the library is full of unique footage and assets that feel authentic. The content is continually refreshed with new media based on the latest trends and what creators need. And when it comes to licensing, Storyblocks makes it simple. Everything you download is royalty-free, pre-licensed, and protected by legal coverage, so you can use it with no worries. You can even add your YouTube channel ID to your account to help prevent copyright claims. To get started and get 2 extra months free when you sign up for an annual plan, go to storyblocks.com/George Holden to take advantage of this great limited time offer. Thank you to Storyblocks for fixing my video and for giving me music that sounds like this. Anyway, so handheld shooting on the A7C can be a bit of a pain. We're not shooting on a Lumix GH7 with a tiny sensor in a big body and a fantastic stabilisation system. We have a big full-frame sensor in a pretty compact body. But Sony does have one trick that actually helps you improve your stabilisation if you just change a couple of settings. The trick is to change your stabilisation settings from auto to manual. When you do this, you will actually see that you can set your specific focal length that you're currently shooting at. And when you actually set this to the correct focal length depending on your lens, you will notice a massive improvement in the stabilisation quality. And of course, I'm usually shooting in active stabilisation mode, which also gives you a little bit of crop in for electronic stabilisation. And then in DaVinci Resolve, I might add a little bit more stabilisation with a very low cropping ratio. When it comes to my shooting mode and picture profile on the A7C II, I'm shooting in log shooting mode in S-Log3 4K 10-bit, which is just essentially the best quality that this camera can do. But when you're shooting in log, often it can look all grey and mushy like this, and Sony do have a built-in gamma preview mode, but this isn't always the best one to use. But luckily we can actually import our own Preview LUTs that let us preview the image on the back of our camera in a similar way to the way that we might color grade later. And I actually really like using this specific LUT from Caleb Pike at DSLR Video Shooter, absolute goat in my opinion, and this is his S-Log3 to Rec 709 with 2 stops of exposure compensation. Is that how you actually say this file name? Anyway, it lets you expose at +2 on your camera to be able to retain more shadow detail and better dynamic range, while also giving you an actual preview of the exposure corrected in post, if that makes sense. Now, when it comes to my workflow for my video footage, I never talk about color grading because I simply cannot color grade. I just don't have the patience for color grading. If I'm putting together a video, I'm usually making a video pretty quick. I'm not a colorist. I don't know what I'm doing. I can edit photos pretty well, but video is a different discipline altogether in my opinion. So I have found it incredibly useful since I started using Sir's Film Vision color grading suite a while ago. And more recently, I've been using his newer Film Vision Pro color grading suite. And honestly, one of the best things I've ever used in terms of video software. Film Vision Pro is a power grade that you use inside DaVinci Resolve's color grading suite. And honestly, it makes your videos go from not very good to looking very nice with a couple of clicks, and it saves you a lot of time, especially if you're not bothered about learning the intricacies of color grading. I'm going to show you the very simple way that I use Film Vision Pro to get a nice color grade very quickly, but I'll also drop a link in the description to Film Vision Pro, and I think Film Vision Lite, it's called, that's like the more budget-friendly version. These are quite pricey, but honestly, well worth the investment. When you apply the grade to either a specific clip or a group of clips, you'll see a node tree appear with like their various labeled effects. You start by using this node here to select the color space transform you need for your specific log shooting profile from your specific camera. So in this case, I use like S-Log3 to turn this into the ARRI C-Log for the color grade. But you can even use like Rec 709 footage from any DSLR or action camera or whatever you're using. And then at the core of the node tree, we have these 2 nodes that help create the majority of the look. And these are the 2 that I use anyway. The first is selecting the negative film stock. So I think we have like a 250D and then a Vision 3 film stock, and then the actual print. And within the prints, we have many different like realistic film prints, and then also a bunch of different styles or film looks. And I have a bunch of these favorited that I've used so far, but honestly, each time I'm grading, I always try out a couple of other ones and always find a new favorite. So just having these alone creates the majority of the look, And then you can dive into the rest of the nodes to be able to fine tune each grade and then add different effects like halation or film grain. So rather than just being like one style LUT that you throw on your footage, you actually have this entire like color grading suite to be able to apply looks and then also different effects that you can kind of like turn on and off as you need. And one of the main things that I actually use is the exposure like compound node, because as I said earlier, I overexpose my footage by 2 stops to give myself better dynamic range at the end of the day. But then you can use this little compound node to be able to really simply adjust your exposure by -0.5 of a stop, -1 stop, -2 stops, or even plus a couple of stops. And I find this really useful to be able to apply the same look to a bunch of different clips and then make micro adjustments really easily. All of these settings and tricks for shooting video on the A7C II, I haven't talked about photography. Well, because it's easy. I just use the mode dial switch to go into photo mode, I drop my ND down to the weakest strength, I go into auto ISO, and I shoot. And that's literally as easy as it is. I usually take a photo, switch back into video, adjust my ND, get the shot, and then vice versa, go back into photography, rinse and repeat. And if you're not interested in new cameras like the A7C II, I understand. So why not check out this video next, on a bunch of interesting classic digital cameras that you should definitely check out.